Hiya! Welcome to this, my 54th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled the Palindrome Parallax Paradox Podcast, I close out what I suspect is my entire collection of The Middleman. A long-standing crowdsourcing puzzle continues to elude me, and in what I've been watching, Ralph and I took in a fantastic opening weekend of Noises Off. Welcome to the show! He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy. Yep, some of you will have noticed the update there. I've been using the same intro since episode 1, cobbled together a couple of editing suites ago. At the time, I just wanted something quick and goofy, and to be honest, I didn't need it to do anything but get us into the show, but I felt, along with a lot of my segment headers, it was due for an update, so you may notice a few changes as we go through here. Also, quick shout out to the Geek Radio Daily for featuring my promo here and there over the past couple of weeks. Really appreciate it, letting people know about it. Thanks so much. I feel in 50 plus episodes, VideoFuzzy has established itself as a more or less known quantity, but as with quite a few others, it's still seeking its audience, so if you hear this and enjoy it and feel others might as well, let them know. I've got a couple different promos put together now and posted to my feed. Check them out, share them if you're inclined and get a chance. I'd so appreciate that. Thanks. Beyond that, Ralph and I took in the street fair going on last weekend in downtown Bismarck. So much to see. Along with all the great food and craft stands, stumbled on this great little bookstore we'd seen at the local news. Ferguson Books just opened. Fun little space, stocked with a nice selection of new and used books, friendly and helpful staff, a nice part of a great afternoon out. Then, this past weekend, we took in the Apple Fest fundraiser at Buckstop Junction, east of town. Lots of historical sites, old-timey threshing machines, along with food trucks, baked goods, lots of people out for this one, despite the weather being a little grumbly. Great cause, too. The event raises money for the Bismarck Cancer Center. Happy to get out there and see everything. Good job, everyone. Correction. Error. I've told you guys before I listen to these recordings over and over again, partly because I love hearing myself talk. How obvious was that? And for quality control. Well, I've actually listened to episode 52 a dozen times by now and I had two corrections. One, that the Bravo West Wing Marathon from 2004 was on Labor Day, not Memorial Day. I know, big whoop when they aired it. Well, in that recording I mentioned I thought that's when they ran it, so I wasn't all up in a bunch about having gotten that wrong. I'm only bringing it up now because, like I said, I've listened to that installment a lot and only just noticed that I misidentified President Bartlett's Assistant Chief of Staff, Bradley Whitford's character, Josh Lyman. I called him John Lyman at once. That is, I identified him correctly several times over the course of this production, including elsewhere in that very episode, and also, on reflection, no big whoop, Josh Lyman was Josh Lyman throughout that production, whatever I called him on this silly podcast. But just for my own peace of mind, I encountered the error and hereby acknowledge and correct it, and hope to do better going forward. Peace.
Friday Night Feature.
In 2008, ABC Family premiered The Middleman, a short-run superhero series based, according to the fine folks at IMDb, on the graphic novels of Javier Grillo-Marchal and Les McLean. I've suspected for a while that I missed the pilot episode of that production, which shows up in this collection on disc 656, and I've otherwise encountered all of the only season they gave it. I was holding off featuring this production because I was genuinely interested in recalling how Natalie Morales as Wendy Watson, a photogenic struggling artist sharing an illegal sublet in a city they didn't want to name but was clearly New York, rooming with another photogenic young artist and best friend Lacey, along with her friend Noser, beset very occasionally by the skeevy landlord of their illegal sublet, Pip, but seeing how she first encountered the organization Too Secret to Know and the establishment of the mythos of the Middleman. Since the beginning of time, there's always been an agent with access to extraordinary resources so as to fend off extraordinary threats, including supernatural, paranormal, and merely outrageous. There's always one middleman and one middleman in training, and when Matt Kiesler was promoted, he pulled in Wendy Watson, nicknamed Debbie, as his trainee. From the outset, Debbie raised objections to her wardrobe, her gear, the secret nature of their work, not to mention the many dangers they encountered. Other issues arose with the brusque, not especially helpful nature of Ida, the android assigned to Middleman headquarters. Over the course of the season, Debbie undertook her Middleman training with Mark Dacascos as Sensei Ping, encountered the revived, cryogenically frozen, and actively disruptive former Middleman Kevin Sorbo, negotiated extra-dimensional perils, fell in love, and fought off mad scientists, vampires, zombies, and ventriloquists, and their various schemes for world domination. Throughout, Debbie stamped her own personality onto the role and grew in confidence and ability to face down the challenges her job threw at her. So it is with mixed resolve I choose the series finale of The Middleman to be my Friday night feature. The Palindrome Reversal Palindrome, turned up on disc 740, finds Middleman trainee and Ida huddled at Middleman headquarters with the only clues they've got. Images etched into mirrors left behind at the scene of two crimes, the heist of a sphere of medical-grade beryllium and an oscillation overthruster. The mirrors feature a stick figure and a light bulb. 11 hours later, they're frankly stumped, so they call it a night. Later, so much later, Debbie meets up with Tyler, the love interest I breeze past so breezily up there. He's 3 hours late to their dinner date. He comes bearing gifts, a diamond tennis bracelet, and declares his love for her and apologizes. It's his new job, assistant to Mark A. Shepard as Fatboy Industries servant Neville. She understands. Her job is demanding as well. She says she can't fault him for having a similarly demanding job, and he appreciates that and wants to be more reliable, but given that his boss actually lands a chopper on her roof to pick Tyler up 12 minutes into their date, knows he has to establish some work-life boundaries, and takes off. The next day, Debbie learns of a third heist, this time doll's eyes from a toy factory, and a third mirror left in their wake. Wavy lines that look like a river. They learn the eyes are made of polydichloride, which Ida confirms can be combined with the beryllium and overthruster to activate a quantum singularity, a black hole through which Kevin Sussman, as Ivan Navi, the palindrome, intends to dive into an alternate reality. Before setting up the quantum singularity device, of course, he leaves the final mirrored panel, a hat, thus completing the palindrome. A man, a plan, a canal. Panama. The same backwards and forwards. Left well enough alone, the device would have made a one-to-one exchange and shut down, thus destroyed by the good, not heist-prone version of Ivanavi, who popped out of presumably this side of the singularity, but what fun would that be? Instead, the Middleman is knocked out by some of the quantum singularity energy, and Debbie is dragged on through as Ivanavi escapes. Matt, I'm calling him Matt, although we did learn at some point that his character's given name is Clarence, is incensed, interrogates Ivanavi, who tells him about the dystopian nightmare he escaped. He's still got a psychic link to his otherworld counterpart, though, and Matt gives him a message to pass along to Debbie, who has a lot more problems navigating the corporo-fascist dystopia in which she finds herself. The message tells her how to get back, but she'll first need to track down Matt's dystopian counterpart at the Mirrorland Middleman headquarters. I'm breezing through this, but the process requires mending fences with the Mirror World Lacey and motivating Mirrorland Matt and Ida, who cannot be made to care, but who can be bribed with, oh, hey, a tennis bracelet. Debbie connects with a Fatboy insider named Joe 90 she met at Lacey's loft party, who gets her into Fatboy Industries, and she confronts herself. Well, this was a little predictable. I mean, the only W World counterpart she'd not yet met in this parallel universe was herself. Turns out Mirrorland Her is evil, Kel Surprise, and the real power behind Servant Neville's Fatboy Industries. Evil Debbie had him cryogenically frozen. I did like the idea that her character was so strong under the right circumstances this middle gal sidekick would try to take over the world. And coincidentally enough, Fatboy Industries houses the quantum singularity gun she needs to get home. Well, because in her home dimension Debbie has trained with Sensei Ping, she easily overpowers Evil Debbie, switches glasses with her, and is going to sneak out of Fatboy Industries with the QSG, pretending to hold Alt Lacey hostage when Evil Debbie comes to and sicks her minions on Debbie. Oh noes! But just at that moment, Mirror Matt rides in on his motorcycle, defeats Evil Debbie and her fat boy minions, and alley-oops Debbie to the rooftop she needs to get to so as to fire the Q MacGuffin and Ruby Slipper her way home. The show is built on comic book logic. As listed on IMDb, one of the middleman's first lines to Debbie is, "You know how in comic books, mad scientists, androids, and robots are always trying to take over the world? Well, it really does happen like that. Fortunately, the organization Too Secret to Know has an arsenal of powerful resources to combat these dangers, all the while keeping shush about them as far as the public is concerned. When they respond to an anomalous event, the middlemen are given cover stories. For instance, when they responded to the factory heist, they presented themselves as grief counselors from the United States Police. Or, as I described it in episode 47, it's basically a freeware version of Men in Black. Along with mad scientists, ghosts, aliens, vampires, and mind control, the middle world is filled with clever turns of phrase, hokey interjections. Even the episode titles are magnificently overblown. We had the pilot episode Sanction, the accidental conception, the Sino-Mexican revelation, the Manicoid teleportation conundrum, the flying fish zombification, the boy band superfan interrogation, the cursed tuba contingency, the ectoplasmic panhellenic investigation, the obsolescent cryogenic meltdown, the vampiric puppet lamentation, the Clotharian contamination protocol, and, of course, the Palindrome Reversal Palindrome. Effects are mostly cheesy prefab numbers, very cheap, mailed in even by classic green screen standards. I loved how little the production team cared about holding our hands through the suspension of disbelief phase of our car ride to the bad guy. The low-res stock street footage they pulled in looked like it might have been shot in the 1980s, and at one point just starts over mid-scene. Well, I suppose if you're going to fight the palindrome, you'll occasionally need to teleport from one part of the city to the next. Standard tech built for the middle car. Seamless, too, since none of the actors reacted at all. Mostly this show is goofy fun, entertaining, reminded me a bit of Powerless, a research and development arm of Wayne Security, seeking solutions to the everyday wear and tear cities and citizens face while caught in the destructive crossfire between good and evil, superheroes battling their arch nemeses and the chaos left in their wake. I think I got most of that one. Yep, flipping back through my current catalog, I'm showing most of that show's first and only season, a short-run winter replacement in 2017, except once again I missed the pilot episode, then episode 6 and the final 3 episodes, which IMDb swears there were air dates, but I never saw any evidence of them. I see where I can stream watch them on YouTube for $10 altogether, so now I'll have to decide whether Oh, of course I want to. And 5 22-minute episodes, that's not even all that much of a time suck. I've watched longer movies. Bad ones. If I decide that's how I'm going to spend one of these evenings coming up here, I'll let you know how it goes. My personal history with comic books is kind of light. I read Archie comics and Dennis the Menace growing up, and in 2nd grade there was a pile of comic books and a carol in the background that I would completely zone out on. I'd be reading them and look up, and so much time had passed, and everyone was doing something else. Thinking back on it, I don't know why something like that would even be allowed, but at least I was reading something, I guess, though sitting here thinking about it, I can't actually tell you what comic books they were. Oh, and I know I read Mouse at some point. Chilling. Comic book-based media, I'm a little stronger. I caught a few of the Christopher Reeves Superman movies on television growing up, and Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. I also caught campy 60s Batman reruns in the 1970s, and more to the point, watched all of the Batman movies in theaters. Well, most of them. All of the Burton-Schumacher franchise, long enough to notice and be ticked off that Harvey Dent was inexplicably recast from Billy D. Williams to Tommy Lee Jones. At first I reacted to misplaced multiculturalism, but I got over that instantly. I mean, why can't Harvey Dent be black? Just because there weren't a whole lot of African-American city attorneys in the 1940s when the character was created doesn't mean he never would have been. If you've decided that's what you're doing in 1989, well, then just keep him around for 1995. Harvey Dent is not some random Gothamite. Oh, can Two-Face be black? Well, hell, half of Two-Face is purple, so why on earth not? Oh, I just saw where they got Billy D. Williams to voice Two-Face in the Batman Lego movie, which makes me happy. Also, I watched Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and I watched a bunch of Batman the Animated Series. Go Mark Hamill, and I'm aware of Teen Titans. Cyborg's fun, but I preferred him in the Justice League. The Middleman and Powerless I already talked about. I caught Birds of Prey when it was on the WB, I think it was. I enjoyed Cape. I gave Heroes way more of a chance than I honestly should have. I saw The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2, Deadpool and Deadpool 2, Sin City, Suicide Squad. I enjoyed The Watchmen. I enjoyed the Darkman trilogy. Watched Ghost Riders and Spawn. I've watched a lot of the X-Men, and I've watched a good chunk of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in theaters and on cable, hoping to catch most, if not all of that, as they continue to air. But there are huge holes in my viewing too, like most of the Spider-Men. Entire franchises I just skipped. Skipped the Hulks. Ralph's a huge fan of manga and anime, a lot of which flies right on past me. I watched the first season or so of The Walking Dead, but not much since. I've watched Preacher, Happy, and Deadly Class, all drawn from comics, and Legion. Of course, I loved Legion, but I've skipped all of Smallville, all of Lois and Clark, and oh wow, the CW lineup. I've skipped The Flash, Arrow, Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, the new Batwoman series, almost certainly going to be missing that. I mentioned reading Archie comics growing up, skipped Riverdale, and skipped Sabrina the Teenage Witch, both on the CW and Nickelodeon. The broadest range of stuff I've never seen and then have never heard of. I'm sure it's great, and some of it is awesome, and as I increase the time I allot for consuming of new media, I'm sure my focus will expand. But for now, mostly I'm just trying to get these discs cataloged. I love comic books and superhero stories. I think the format has served some phenomenal storytelling. I'm just watch what I'm able to, and the rest will just have to wait. Cross Connection. In my Studio 6 Feet Under challenge for The Middleman from the episode I just featured here, we had Ivan Avi as the Palindrome, Kevin Sussman, who was Stuart on The Big Bang Theory with Simon Helbig from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Link-wise, the show was trending in that direction anyway, with Natalie Morales and Parks and Rec with Bradley Whitford from Studio 60 as well. I got so excited noticing that Stewart was in this that I nearly missed the Baby Doll Factory owner played by Warren Sweeney. He's credited as being in a lot of stuff once, but one of those was The West Wing, so he had solid ties in that direction as well. Scrolling through IMDb, I saw that along with Mark Shepard, he was also in Sliders in the 90s, as well as Night Court, Caroline in the City, The X-Files. Heading into this century, I mentioned The West Wing. He also shows up in Medium, Close to Home, The Office. I feel like I must have watched at least part of Jericho. He was in that. He was in Saving Grace, Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, and Rizzoli and Isles, and oh hey, Better Off Ted with Jay Harrington and Portia de Rossi. I'm pretty sure I have most of that one somewhere as well. Shifting focus to the Eurekas I cataloged for this one, I found Frances Fisher shows up in the third season premiere and recurs through most of that season. She turns up as well in the third season of Fargo, one of my favorite episodes, The Law of Non-Contradiction, and according to IMDb makes several appearances in my collection, including Strange Luck. I don't know if I recorded that, but I for sure enjoyed it. She was in The X-Files, Boston Legal, Medium, Grey's Anatomy, Saving Grace. She had a recurring role on The Shield. She was in The Good Guys, Sons of Anarchy, Torchwood, Castle, after I stopped watching it. Same with Criminal Minds. I see she's got a recurring role on The Watchmen premiering this fall, but I don't know. Never say never. I wasn't planning on taking on anything new this fall, but loved Rorschach, loved Dr. Manhattan, loved The Comedian. I may need to... Oh, it's on premium cable? Pass. Last time I debated whether to talk about the scrap of Turner Classic Movies cinema I found in my collection. On disc 722 I found what looks to be a 15-minute scrap of the 1948 artsy-fartsy ballet fantasy The Red Shoes. I decided against it because, if memory serves, I pulled in the full production at some point, so I was just going to wait until it turned up and then comment on it then. But this past week I was clicking past Turner Classic Movies and encountered the 1940 version of Gaslight, not the Oscar-winning production from 1944. This one had Anton Walbrook as a ruddy ne'er-do-well gaslighter, Paul Mallon, nipping out to a nightclub with some floozy while his poor wife at home worried that she was going mad. I recorded a scrap with the Can-Can dancers on stage to disc X275, and while I was cataloging it, I discovered that Walbrook also played the Mad Svengoolie dancemeister Boris Lermontov in The Red Shoes, so it was fun to see that connection in here. Tracking it through Studio 6 Feet Under, I'm showing Frank Pentangel from Gaslight in Beckett with Richard Burton, in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with George Siegel, in Boston Legal with Ed Begley Jr. from 6 Feet Under. I'm also showing Gaslight's Kathleen Cordell in MASH with Donald Sutherland, who was in Dirty Sexy Money with Peter Krause, also from 6 Feet Under, so not too bad for a melodrama from 1940. Call this meeting to order. Calling up a little old business. In other finds, I encountered the closing moments from the Raising the Bar series premiere I featured here in episode 53, and in all modesty, I called the crap out of that resolution. That's about where my copy cuts out. I'm sure this resolved because the show continued for a couple dozen more episodes on TNT, and I'm sure Kellerman didn't spend them all in the clink. It seems to me that this is about where his boss would show up and grease a few wheels, throw some realpolitik around, and clue Kellerman in on how things really work in this city. Kellerman's boss meets with Judge Kessler and reminds her that all of her autocratic moves, a 25-year sentence for misdemeanor possession of a jackknife, then tossing defense counsel into lockup with his client, aren't going to look good in her bid for DA, and she relents, springing not only Kellerman but his client, Calvin Hines, with time served, the plea that Assistant DA Earnhardt agreed to on the misdemeanor parole violation in the wake of Calvin's being found not guilty in the rape charge on which he had been held for nearly a year. As the pilot episode drew to a close, Kellerman confronts Earnhardt and McGrath about who brought the new evidence, the confession by the real rapist, to Kessler, complaining that, quote, blind luck should not determine whether an innocent man goes free or not. Well, okay, but if I'm still going to require a reinforced steel cable for the suspension of disbelief on any particular Deus Ex Machina, maybe write it better. Oh, that wasn't even the worst of it, though. In the run-up to this fancy lawyer party they're all at later that night, we discover Kessler is using her clerk, Charlie, as a shag toy, despite his off-hours predilection for hanging out at gay bars. No shame, bisexuality is a thing, and power can be quite the aphrodisiac. We see that in Kellerman's office as well, with his colleague, Richard Woolsey, at the party, the ex-parte party, perhaps, hitting on their boss, Rosalind Whitman, who, in her case, had the sense of propriety to politely decline the pass. Cut then to Kellerman and Earnhardt's long, romantic kiss in, it looked like probably his, tiny bathroom. Well, seriously, Botchko, what was this trying for? Grey's Anatomy but lawyers? Pah! Diving into my classic collection. In my classic VHS to DVD transfers, as I was closing out the cataloging for this one, I glimpsed the penultimate episode in Season 1 of Prison Break. I remembered the tightly plotted approach, Wentworth Miller as Michael Schofield, his superpower-focused and careful planning, referencing his full-body tattoo as his plans unfolded, getting himself tossed into the prison he helped design so as to break himself and his brother Lincoln out. The high-stakes negotiations, the alliances he needed to forge, the materials he needed to acquire, dealing with obstacles and the unexpected as it arose, and all the while looking like just another inmate. It was a clever show, until it wasn't. It went on for seasons longer than it should have. I'm mildly annoyed to note that I watched it right up until it ended in 2009, and I did not watch the 2017 reboot because... seriously? But yeah, as more of these episodes come into view, I'm looking forward to seeing them, especially Season 1. Well written, well drawn, well presented. The first couple seasons for sure were a chess match, and I'll enjoy watching it play out. I also caught the 7th season premiere of The Shield, which was the beginning of the end for this anti-heroic saga, and I this weekend discovered one of those false memory Mandela effect things where your brain remembers something completely differently than how it happened. See, I remember Vic Mackey dodging a season-long investigation by federal agent Olivia Murray, played by Mary McCormick, but no! According to IMDb, Agent Murray was played by Laurie Holden. I wondered how I was so confused. Maybe McCormick investigated Sam Crow in Sons of Anarchy, but nope, she wasn't in that either. She was in Will and Grace last year as one of Grace's terrible sisters, but that was not what I was remembering. So as I rewatch Season 7 of The Shield, I'll get to experience afresh what it was about Holden's performance that I've so misremembered as being that of an entirely different other actress. Yeah, sure, Mary Shannon investigated things on In Plain Sight, but like I said, my brain had put her in the final season, indeed the closing moments of The Shield, delivering the killing blow to a corrupt and disgraced Vic Mackey, and that wasn't her at all. Weird. Speaking of perception issues, in the fourth season Nip Tuck episode Connor McNamara, Ruth Williamson reprised her role as plastic surgery addict Hedda Grubman. She'd suffered a stroke in the second season after too many procedures. It had destroyed her body and her family, but in her season 4 appearance, she was vibrant, much recovered, a changed woman. She intended a spectacular public celebration of her recovery, but unfortunately she was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer and had maybe minutes to live, so she wanted Doctors Troy and McNamara to make her pretty for her casket. Yep, she basically dies and Dr. Troy works on her corpse, which theme-wise is as close a tie to 6 Feet Under as you'd never need, but while he's got her in the operating suite, Ruth Williamson, in a glittery ball gown, has draped herself on an alabaster baby grand piano, introduced and accompanied by Burt friggin' Bacharach, belting out "The Girl's in Love with You." The music choices in this production were dead on. Murph seriously knows for music, and while Sean observes his infant son's reconstructive hand surgery, they played George Michael singing "Jesus to a Child." And in case she felt left out, Jolie Richardson as Julia sleeps with the nanny, Peter Dinklage, so as usual it's all go and nip tuck, but along with the music choices, this was a deeply introspective episode, with flashback scenes recounting the pain Sean felt growing up with a cleft palate, his mother's decision to get it repaired leading to his father's abandoning them. It's a lot. This show is a lot, but I enjoyed it pretty much throughout, and this brash, balls-out fearlessness was certainly part of that. Closing this out, oh hey, I've got 30 rocks. I forgot I kept any 30 rocks. Scrolling back, it looks like I've got at least 3, all from the first season. The one I saw here, Blind Date, Jack Donnelly set Liz Lemon up with his friend Thomas, who turns out to be Gretchen Thomas, and Liz's throne, sort of, but actually they kind of hit it off. If only she weren't so darned heterosexual. For his part, Jack throws down with the girly show crew and whoops their butts in some seriously unrealistic high-stakes poker. Guys are putting up their wedding rings, their Emmys. Well, Emmys they find around the office, Liz's Emmy, but yeah, until Ken the Page sits down and Jack is entirely unable to read him. Mostly because, as it turns out, he really cannot play poker, but he just keeps getting winning hands. Jack regains the upper hand with Ken the Page's ultimate destruction, but then spares him. In this third episode, the show was still finding itself. Absolutely had some weird energy here and there. Jack's power plays, Liz's persistent fears that she would die alone in her apartment. Such vivid images, dark for a show still establishing itself. But other words to say that is bold, fresh, and new, which in 2006 it was cool to see. And, oh yeah, as 7 seasons worth of viewers would seem to have agreed, definitely ready for prime time. Crowdsourcing! Speaking of Mandela Effect misrememorries, I thought I had an update on Crowdsourcing Exhibit E, a scrap of video sitting unresolved in my collection on disc 599. It's a piece of sketch comedy set in medieval England, portraying 3 young women, and they all talk like this. All heavily accented, like Valley Girl vocal fry meets British accents. They're excited about going to the Chaucer concert. The slenderer of the 2 blonde girls, Morgana, got her damsel in distress hat at Ye Olde Spotsy Girly. Anyway, there was a sneak peek at Superstore's Season 5 fall premiere coming up this next week, and I caught a glimpse of Justine, played by Kelly Schumann, and it clicked for me. She reminded me of the heavier girl in that sketch. Well, pull it up and take a look, and no, that's not her. Her face is completely different, and if we needed a final nail in the coffin, the actress would have been far too young to be her in 2006. Not that I have a great lock on when the sketch was performed, but that's the latest it could have been. I clicked around, and from photos it looks like she could have been Rebel Wilson. I scrolled through Tumblr feeds and goggled images, and yep, in 2006 Rebel was doing sketch comedy, but the show didn't sound right for this sketch. From a description on IMDb, it sounded like an Australian version of League of Gentlemen. The only 2 sketches I've got her in are a half-second of her in a garret bedchamber wearing floofy pink jammies playing the bongos, and immediately following she's hanging out with her buds practicing the lute in a castle turret. I've got the vaguest sense of who she might be, no sense of who the other actors in that scene are. Of course, there are no network watermarks over the entire 2-minute sketch, and if it is Rebel Wilson, my options for what that show might have been are pretty much limited to The Wedge. which by itself hardly narrows it from, say, any sketch comedy show featuring 3 women at any point between the mid-80s, per the sketch's reference to Madonna, and the May 2008 episode of Grey's Anatomy that ran before it. The 2006 Doctor Who episode, The Girl in the Fireplace, that ran after it, was clearly not recorded contemporaneously, and given my entire collection is all jumbled together, generally I can't nail down too many specifics time-wise. Sorry. But if you've got a moment, I'd appreciate your clicking to the link on that blog entry in my show notes. If you recognize the actors, the sketch, or the show, please let me know. I'd love to nail that down. Thanks. Checking out my current collection. In my current direct-to-DVD recordings, I enjoyed the last couple episodes of Gina Torres in Pearson more than heretofore. They're still pretty sparse and simplistic. Chicago City Hall seems eerily vacant and lackadaisical. It feels like we watch these characters spend entire days on any one given issue, complain when others do that. How can you help your assistant instead of your sister? When a nursing assistant takes leftovers from the cafeteria to feed the homeless, her supervisor actually asks her about that. I mean, none of the people we see in this show would have any time for any of these things with the daily laundry baskets full of actual problems city leaders in Chicago have to deal with. Oh wow, you're the mayor's brother and someone's got you on tape saying you killed someone? You're in Chicago. If that's all they've got, a semi-decent defense attorney can get that kicked on chain of evidence alone. You don't hide in an abandoned building for days while literally nothing is happening with it. Oh, you're the mayor's wife, you've got MS, your husband's out late every single night, you're not sure he's sleeping with the city attorney, but when you find out, you take his place at a conference of mayors so as to torture her about it. You are grown adults in a very pragmatic environment. It seems like everyone's handling themselves like grown-ups, but yeah, that would have been worth a conversation with your husband first, yes? I hadn't realized Pearson was a spin-off from the USA Network's production of Suits. I stopped watching Suits years ago. It was so terrifically unlikely. A kid hires on as a paralegal despite having 0 credentials, having been nicked for cheating on the bar exam, actually taking it for other people because he's just got such a natural talent for this. The whole first season, and hell, who knows, maybe the whole rest of the series, is they hire this guy and he's amazing, but this junior partner version of Gladys from Bewitched, he's got his suspicions and spends every free moment he's got, which is way too many of them, honestly, trying to trip him up. Oh, you went to Harvard? Then you surely remember the school fight song. How does that go again? After they got a hacker to backstall some credentials for him. Hey, that guy doesn't give out A+. How did you get an A+ in that class? What's the fastest way to get from the student union to Professor Maitland's class? Oh, trick question. Maitland's not there anymore, etc., etc. ad absuratum. So, realizing this, I'm not sure if I feel better about Pearson or worse. The mayor's gone for a week, and when he comes back, the biggest thing he has to deal with is a tent city of homeless people protesting in front of City Hall and negotiating with them long into the night, only to be surprised when some carpetbagger opportunist latches onto the media they're getting, and nope, he won't be bought off with an appointment to the alderman vacancy that has somehow remained vacant for months, despite the fact that once so appointed, he's got a much higher profile from which to criticize the mayor while being a pain in the ass about a zillion other things. So yeah, not much left of this season. It was kind of fun to watch as a Machiavellian slap fight, but no, one season's plenty long enough for me. What else? Preacher's gearing up for a pretty significant finale. God is just torturing Allfather now, possibly to death. Boy's bleeding out as of last week's installment, Dingo Ate Me Baby maker. Not to be outdone, Tulip and Cassidy track down the hopelessly that gene pool could use some chlorine circus freak inbred direct descendant bastard offspring of Christ, affectionately known as Humperdew, and their plans are to kill him, which I'm sure the logic when they came up with this plan was airtight, but could probably use a little duct taping, not least of which with Jesse being dead and all, and we think probably in hell. Well, nowhere he's not been before, so feels like this is all heading someplace exciting. A new episode is sitting on my DVR, just looking forward to checking that out. I've grabbed a couple of eye-catching commercials lately. This one from United Health Services has an older couple getting married in a beach wedding. Guests throw birdseed during the recessional, and the wedding party is just dive-bombed by seagulls. That's a seriously fun commercial. Then I find this late-night Comedy Central commercial for an app called Dave, where you can get $75 interest-free. Yeah, I've done zero research. I am not recommending this app, but it was for sure eye-catching. The Milk Marketing Board people included a same-sex couple in its promotional materials. I gotta say it was nice to be seen, and okay, I recently saw an Audi commercial that made me feel very hopeful about Daniel Craig's successor. Very quickly, a woman is seated between two big guys in a plane stuck on the runway. She feels trapped, handcuffed even, you see it, when suddenly, bam, smash, she cuts loose, breaks free, tears open the door, and leaps to the Audi keeping pace with her plane. She's free! Liberacion! Oh, darn, it was all a daydream. They're all still stuck there. But now, she's more determined. Directly, it put me in mind of the plans to cast a woman as James Bond, and, I mean, wow, I have seen some dumb arguments against... What? Just imagine a woman achieving 00 status. Let's just make Wonder Woman a man, then. That's not how Ian Fleming wrote it. To make it a completely different character. Look, an international operation like the Ministry has hundreds of field agents and support crew all over the world. It is improbable that every single one of them is a handsome, youngish male operative. License to Kill requires discipline and training, but having watched Kill Bill and Atomic Blonde and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I know for a fact it wouldn't require a penis, and at any rate, it certainly expands the storytelling. Hell, never mind male. For the past 4 installments, James Bond practically had to be that specific guy for the stories to work. I understand the show is in production. Lashana Lynch has been tapped for the designation. I cannot wait to see what she does with this. All the absolute best. VideoFuzzy at the movies. Shifting seamlessly into a movie chat, I pulled in several movies over the past couple of weeks. Most unremarkable, but I was happy to encounter my copy of the FX presentation of Summer of Sam, saved in my collection across discs 740 and 741. In 1999, director Spike Lee turned a compelling, evocative lens on the Bronx, summer of 1977, a magnifying glass, a pressure cooker. The heat is unbearable. Everything is getting on everyone's last nerve. Apart from the reality of a serial killer stalking the neighborhood, the measures people were taking to stay safe and combat the nightmarish dread were taking their toll. Knocking on doors, mob rule, vigilante justice, Goombas blockading bridges running into and out of the neighborhood, stopping cars, pulling people from them, and beating on them. The other side of it was neighborhood block parties, neighbors all in the streets looking out for each other, kids playing in the parks, people sharing food. That was, less than a minute of this movie. About all the rest of it was the monsters are due on Maple Street, amped up Twilight Zone levels of mistrust, culminating in one instance, people targeting longtime neighborhood residents. Teenage kid they knew for years. He's the one! He's the Son of Sam killer! Beat down, the night news reports confirmed that they had arrested the guy. Yeah, gotta say, Michael Badaluccio played the killer. David Berkowitz did a really good job with him. Pudgy, nondescript, absolutely would not have stood out in that neighborhood. Losing his damn mind in that walk-up, no-relief apartment. Shut up, that damn dog! He's outside his window. He's trying to sleep. There's this dog. This black dog will not stop barking. It's driving him nuts. He's documented some of this on his walls, punched holes in his walls, scrawled messages. They said the voices were telling him to kill, murder, kill the dog. He thought he shot that dog, and the dog was in his apartment. What do you want from me? I'll do anything you ask. Telling him to kill them all. I gotta say, the combination of lighting effects, Berkowitz's hysteria, contrasting the calm voice of the dog with what it was telling him to do, seriously effective storytelling. Along with Badaluccio, Summer of Sam featured John Leguizamo, Bebe Neuwirth, Patti LuPone, Mira Sorvino, Adrian Brody. I gotta say, I really enjoyed encountering this thing. Powerful piece of cinema. Finding this reminded me of when I was talking about bringing in the Zodiac Killer back in episode 5, as I said, a show that starred no one and featured nothing. Well, that's as may be, but since then I posed an argument that everything in my collection can be pretty easily traced through Studio 6 Feet Under, so how does that 1971 entry fare? Well, I began clicking through the cast list on IMDb, and sure enough, quite a lot of the people involved in that production have one credit. A few, however, went on to bigger and better things, including Bob Jones, who appeared in Magnum P.I. with Tom Selleck, who appeared on Friends with Studio 60's Matthew Perry. But even one guy with only 2 credits, Ray Lynch, his other credit puts him in MASH with Alan Alda, in The West Wing with Studio 60's Bradley Whitford. They were so proud of how low rent they were, and then they hire such luminaries as Bob Jones and Ray Lynch. Even top-billed Hal Reed was only in 3 other things, shared casting credits with Darren McGavin as stalwart reporter Carl Kolchak himself from Kolchak the Night Stalker, featured in some of my favorite entries in Chris Gouling's The Forgotten TV podcast. McGavin gets you to Ian Hart in Stillwater's Burn, Hart gets you to Dirt with Courtney Cox, and Friends with Matthew Perry from Studio 60. I'm beginning to suspect that were I to aim my camera out my window, shoot 20 minutes of film and save it to my collection, I would still be able to successfully track someone who appeared in that video through Studio 6 Feet Under.
What I've been watching.
So a month ago now, I wanted to see if USA Network's Mr. Robot's 4th season was starting soon. It wasn't. Nearest I'm seeing is first part of October. And I was going to backtrack whether prior seasons would be available on demand, because I've never seen one episode of this show, and I've heard some amazing things about it. They weren't, by the way, so 0 for 2. Although I did see where Bravo was still showing all of the Season 17 Project runways with Christian Siriano, so Rolf and I will probably start working through some of those here. But what I did see, clicking through the USA lineup, was straight-up Steve Austin. The former pro wrestler wrangles interviews with celebrities like awesome ex-Marine and funny guy Rob Riggle, and country music artist Trace Atkins, and comedian Gabriel Iglesias. From the promo materials, it looked like it was going to celebrate clinical levels of testosterone poisoning, and, well, for Christ's sake, it's on USA, home of the WWE Monday Night Raw Professional Wrestling, so how's that out of place? Well, I like Rob Riggle, I thought, and decided, what the hell, I'll check it out. Now, I've only watched 2 of these, Rob Riggle and Fluffy, so in other episodes, mayhaps he retreats to the salon or the veranda for a postprandial snifter of brandy and a tour of 19th century literature, or a back and forth on Kantian repudiation of Hobbes. But in the 2 I saw, his guests drove out to meet him, Rob in a big ol' lift kit Jeep, and Fluffy in his muscle car Trans Am, the Blue Demon. Steve hops in the driver's seat of Rob's Jeep and takes him to a commissioned military tank, where they get in and a driver rolls over a dozen or so scrap vehicles. They remove a couple of the doors and later use them for target practice with a machine gun. With Fluffy, Steve's there with his red muscle car Trans Am, and they pop the hood and listen to each other's engines, then take him to a drag strip, the biggest remaining drag strip in LA County, and the guy running the strip tells them about drag racing, burning out the coating on the track and all that. Then Fluffy and Steve Austin pedal down, and Steve Austin wins by many seconds. In both shows they got food. Steve took Rob to where a chef was frying whole chickens in, 50-gallon oil drums or something. With Fluffy, Steve pulled in a burrito master from Fluffy's favorite burrito place, Perezzo's, and they made flaming hot Cheeto dust burritos with, French fries and seasoned beef, flaming hot Cheetos, sour cream, and nachos, and, oh man, all of the cheese. Got him rolled up, cut in half, and Steve dipped his burrito half actually in the flaming hot Cheeto dust, so yeah, I got some kick on that. Steve should have had his Steve Austin brand homebrew beer to wash that down like he offered Rob Riggle. Also, like with Rob, I mentioned the machine gun and the doors. With Fluffy, Steve Austin did archery with crossbows and pressurized 2-liter bottles that exploded in pink and blue dust when hit. Fluffy hit 3 pink bottles and Steve Austin hit 4 blue ones. Both shows he took the chance to talk about their past connections with him and about their current projects and what they got going on, and a bunch of grrs and hell yes, and end of his show with Fluffy, they got pedicures, which, okay, that was kind of along the lines. Stone Cold Steve Austin with toenail polish, hell yeah! Red, white, and blue, got a problem with that, you can take it up with my crossbow, grr! More fun than him getting a mani-pedi was probably Fluffy going to his own hell yeah voice, which, maybe it came up in his show. Most of the characters he creates are maybe more feminine, so it was fun to hear him getting all butch and pull it off with Stone Cold Steve Austin backing him up. I couldn't shake the feeling that this USA production was like if Steve Austin had a podcast and they made it into a television show. This was kind of what that would look like. Come to find out, Steve Austin actually has a podcast, and hey, check it out. It's been running for years. You can find archived copies at mmapodcast.com/wrestling/The Steve Austin Show with hyphens. You can find that link in my show notes, as well as current episodes at Apple Podcasts. Steve Austin is a showman and a storyteller, so nope, straight up Steve Austin, not likely to be tuning in myself, but if guys kicking back and cutting loose, crushing cars and shooting stuff sounds like it'd be fun to watch, which, be fair, it was. Yeah, there's a lot worse you can watch. Oh, speaking of segues, I saw the August 21st installment of Lights Out with David Spade on Comedy Central. It's sort of like David Spade invites a panel of celebrities on stage with him to all look at their phones, talk about whatever, and just react to whatever Spade puts up on the view screen. The one I saw featured Nikki Glaser, Todd Barry, and Bert Kreischer, who are comedians. Of course they are. Who am I to... Why would I feel like I needed to tell people with that kind of star power on the dais? Nikki Glaser dishing out the behind-the-scenes hot goss from her appearance on Dancing with the Stars, which she called the jury duty of being a celebrity, got kicked off after the first, which I was like, you know how you look up in the night sky, you have to go way out in the middle of Montana, and it should be winter, and there are powerful telescopes available these days to the public, and if you look really hard, it's possible the person who sold it to you is a bigger star than any of the people on that dais. One of the people I saw in my hypothetical out my window video might be, if Nikki Glaser was on Dancing with the Stars, Sully Sullenberger, Ken Bone, a Not My Kid dancer on Maury might be a bigger star. We're talking stars with the wattage. They lit some of the scenes in Sweeney Todd. They're asking Sean Spicer to be on that show. Lights Out is what I thought Viacom yelled after the first episode. The one I saw, and it's still going, it's been running since July, it's still running somehow. They were reporting ratings, not this one, but there are podcasts with more subscribers than Lights Out has viewers. I was watching it. At one point they were all on their phones. I would not recommend watching this. In other What Were They Thinking, Ralph and I caught the premiere of something called Supermarket Stakeout on the Food Network, and I wondered who'd lost that bet. Chopped Judge Alex Garnaschelli guides a panel of 3 judges in a supermarket parking lot as chefs accost shoppers leaving with bags of groceries and offer, oh wow, really quick, what do you have? Chefs are given some money and they negotiate to buy people's groceries, and they're set up with al fresco kitchen installations, and they have to quick create meals based on challenges they're given. While they're crafting these masterpieces, they're trash-talking each other, and people are milling around watching all this. The judges try the food. Oh wow, everyone does such a great job. They eliminate contestants and name a winner, $10,000, a year's worth of groceries, which makes me suspect they get $10,000 in store credit, except we were watching the thing, and they never said the name of the grocery store, which was, wow, if y'all were taking up space in my clearly full parking lot, accosting my customers, I would demand at the very least the name of my supermarket was in shot the whole time. I'd rather watch Guys Grocery Games, and I'd prefer to never watch Guys Grocery Games. Hard pass on this thing as well. Finally, oh man, this was fantastic. Ralph and I were able to get over to Noises Off at the Fargo-Moorhead Community Theater on the Island Park stage in Fargo for opening weekend. They did such an amazing job. I'm no expert, but it sounded to me like the troupe called up the original British script, familiar references to the American touring company doggedly trekking this side-splitting farce Nothing On its forced death march to Broadway were instead small repertories like the Grand Theatre at Weston-super-Mare and the Theatre Royal at Ashton-under-Lyne and the Stockton-on-Tees Municipal Theatre, which was the greatest disaster of all, brought out all 3 burglars. Well, if you're not familiar with Noises Off, Michael Frayn's hysterical farce chews through the fourth wall, presenting audiences with a backstage pass to the intersection of comedy and the fourth circle of hell. Dottie Otley as Mrs. Clackett. Well, in this production, Dawn Gunderson as Dottie Otley as Mrs. Clackett. Well, Dottie has sunk her life savings into a crazy little British farce called Nothing On that tumbles Tommy Hosley as Gary Lejeune as lascivious house agent Tramplemain onto the stage with Maddie Johnson as Brooke Ashton as bubbly young tax agent Vicky, followed hard upon by Tom Porth as Freddie Fellows as hapless tax exile Philip Brent and Shanna Franzen as Belinda Blair as his wife Flavia. Crashing through windows is Steve Poitras as Selsdon Mowbray as an aging burglar. At the top of the production, Tom Gillen as director Lloyd Dallas, the director of British farce Nothing On, orders Marshall Downing as his stage manager, Tim Allgood, to order a few backup burglar kits in case the largely functional alcoholic Selsdon wanders off during the production and he or Mary Quanbeck as production assistant Poppy Norton-Taylor needs to go on as understudy. There's probably a version of this that sends Tim on as an understudy for Brooke, and I'd love to see it. Tim's already got to body double Philip Brent, so that Philip can come on at the end of Act 1 as a sheik, and by the end of Act 3, he's already understudying Freddie, laid out with a head injury backstage. First and foremost, huge props to this cast and crew, helmed at the FMCT by Terry Egan. We saw it opening weekend, Saturday night, and they had it well in hand. Energy was a little tentative, but I get it. This show is a high-wire juggling act, just incredibly complicated and technical, and people are so dependent on everyone else getting exactly what needs to go wrong to make it work so well. There's so many moving parts to this show, and if opening night is generally the final tech rehearsal, we got there for final dress. I love this show. I've seen it live half a dozen times, and I would friggin' love to be in it one day. Physically, my ambitions have shifted from the Gary to probably more Lloyd or Selsdon at this point, but that's just bucket list. In all reality, I was involved in a very similar presentation of A Dickens Christmas Carol I was in with my friend Jesse. You'll remember my conversation with him in episode 38. That 2002 Minot Area Theatrical Society production I was on as a bunch of characters, including Bob Cratchit, Marley's Ghost, Mr. Fezziwig, Partygoer, various London citizens, and, oh yeah, the Ghost of Christmas Present. So, if I'm never actually cast in Noises Off, I have all but lived it. They actually staged this downtown earlier this year, but I passed. When I was in Minot, a group of us drove down for the Dakota Stage production in Bismarck more than a decade ago, December of 2006. They had and still have a small stage, and from the photos I saw of the set, it was going to be deja vu all over again. The entire Noises Off set, all 9 entrances, pretty much all on one level, which is a little disappointing to watch. The set is an entire character unto itself. The sprawling obstacles it presents contribute hugely to the comedy of the piece, so when everything's more or less on one level, it's not quite as much fun. Don't get me wrong, for the 2006 production, they did a great job with what they had to work with. The cast was ready and the set functioned, so it was hardly the worst performance I've ever seen. That distinction falls to a small community theater production in Podunk, North Dakota, which was a longish road trip from where I lived in Minot at the time. Halfway through a not especially inspired first act, their Gary stopped after a few exchanges with Dottie and Brooke had become hopelessly tangled, turned to the audience and said, "They're confused because I just jumped 10 pages ahead in the script." I was like, they're not confused. They're trying desperately to keep this outrageously complicated train from flying off the rails, and you're merrily running about disconnecting all the cars. The show isn't funny because everyone's getting their lines wrong. The show is funny because this relatively unprofessional troupe all find themselves working at more or less cross purposes, but mostly trying to keep this show going, if only out of some regard for their audience. The comedy is in the mishandled presentation of Nothing On, not of Noises Off. In a situation like that, I'd do everything I could as an actor to keep the production on the road. Just about throughout, you can bring Lloyd on with a script, swap out a "we're past that, Gary Love," or just skip to the next bit you all remember. If you miss some business you reference later, the audience will assume that's just some new mishap, and then once you've all survived through to your final bow, everyone workshop together for another couple hours, scripts closed, call for lines, nail it down, and do better next time. I'm not unsympathetic. I can only imagine the work that goes into mounting this production. Not only getting the words right, which is just slightly different every act, and getting the moves right, which approaches precision ballet at some moments. A particularly highly physical second act set backstage, and getting the props and business right, but while doing so, telling a story that engages the audience, gets them to care about these people and the difficulties they're encountering. Most audiences are rooting for the company to succeed, and in this case, when we're in on it, it's like when Dottie misses some exposition at the top of Act 3, Gary steps through his character for a moment to say, oh right, she didn't get a chance to explain about watching the Royal, and I thought I should get that straight, just in case somebody's sitting there out in the dark somewhere watching this and thinking, my God! I think the best performance I've ever seen is the production this company staged in 1997, according to the program the last time the FMCT did it. Crackling energy, outrageous farce, and end of that show they brought the entire crew on to take a bow. A couple dozen people at least, all of them brilliant. The vibe from that production to this one is quite different. That production mirrored the movie with Carol Burnett and John Ritter more. This one was excitingly period, very early 1970s. Called to mind the production of Merry Wives of Windsor we caught with my friend Nathan last summer. These guys were great, the set was great, loved the set design and the costuming, oh wow. Shanna's Technicolor fruit stripes, Mrs. Robinson's silk jumpsuit was a show unto itself. Gotta say, absolutely fantastic. Noises Off is great, and if you ever get a chance to see it live, do it. It's pretty much everything I love about theater. Upcoming shows. I wanted to give you all a heads up on, the 9th season of American Horror Story 1984 on FX is already airing by the time you're hearing this. Slasher theme, looking forward to seeing that one. Then, based on the show description, Identity vs. Technology, I set a recording for something airing on FXX Wednesday called Cake, first episode called Cash Flow, spelled C-A-C-H-E. It sounded intriguing, and then I saw a promo and I was like, what? I'll check it out and let you know. Then, much more reliably entertaining, on Thursday they're premiering the 5th season of Superstore and the 4th and final season of The Good Place, both on NBC, so very much looking forward to that. Oh, and finally, observing the 50th anniversary of that production, I saw on September 29th, BBC America is airing a bunch of first season episodes of Monty Python's Flying Circus. Tune in, check it out, see how it holds up. And with that, thank you so much for checking in my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes at Apple Podcasts. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites, via email, or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be silly. We'll find out for sure the next VideoFuzzy.
This is podcasting gold. What are you talking about?
Video out.
Speaking of nostalgia bombs, in his latest episode of Forgotten TV, fellow podcaster Chris Cooling put one hell of a piece together on the several incarnations of Future Cop, some really cool insights regarding pop culture perception of android law enforcement in the 70s, and real-world effects as writers posted some W's v studio management. Check it out.
In 1972, American TV networks canceled 12 TV shows for crimes they didn't commit. These shows were promptly forgotten by the public and faded into obscurity. Today, Chris Cooling researches these shows for a podcast. If there's a TV show that no one else remembers, and if you have earbuds, maybe you can listen to Forgotten TV.